Hi, I'm Isaiah Fuller. I attend Liberty Christian High School, and this is my evaluation on the SNES cult classic, Earthbound. So, Earthbound has been considered a classic in modern days, but it didn't start out that way when it first came out on the SNES in 1994. At the time, the RPG was very different from any other on the market. Because of this, it was a big turnoff and was widely unaccepted by critics and Nintendo fans alike. It seemed like this game would be doomed for the worst Nintendo game ever made. However, when people stopped complaining about how it looked and actually started playing it, they actually started to realize how much of a treasure it really was. From the story, to the gameplay, and even to the quirky humor, for which this game is most famous for, this was a game that truly was one of a kind. And now that you know a little bit about the game, let's get started. Okay, so most RPGs allow you to name your own character, and this is no exception. So you get to name it either whatever you want, from something very standard as Ed, or something super extraordinary like M&M, like the candy wrapper, not the actual wrapper. But you know what? I really don't care what it is, and if you click don't care, it gives you the standard name. So we're going to do that. Now, it does give you a lot of other options to name every other character, but I really don't want to bore you with that, so let's just get started with the actual game itself. Alright, so this is Earthbound, and a meteorite just crashed onto our hometown, so we have to go over and figure out what's up. So first we go down these stairs, and in a typical RPG, you would usually go around and ask around, and to see what's going on and what you need to do. So the first person we're going to talk to is our mom, since she's right over here. Now, we're going to ask her to see if we can go out, which she seems to be pretty okay with, since she knows we're going to be leaving anyway. And all she just asks is that you change into your clothes. Okay, sounds reasonable enough. Alright, so now you usually need to look for something to defend yourself, which will usually be found right near where you start out. Usually in a typical RPG it'd be a treasure chest, but for Earthbound, it's more of a present. Now let's see what we get. It's a crap bag. Now this is our first item in the game. Now we gotta make sure when you get an item, you have to equip it or it's gonna be useless to you. You need to remember that every time you get something new. Alright, now that we have our clothes on, we have our bat on, let's move out and see what's going on with this meteorite that just crashed into our planet. So the main point of the story is that a meteor crashes next to your home and you decide to investigate. When you find it, a mysterious creature named Buzzbuzz warns you that the world will be destroyed in 10 years by an evil entity named Gygus, and the only thing that can stop him is you and 3 other kids. With those words, your adventure to stop an apocalypse starts. And that's pretty much the main gist of the story. So now let's talk about some other things that stand out among this game. One unique and key feature to the game is the ATM machine. This is where all your money goes when you defeat an enemy. This is different from your typical RPG because usually when you kill an enemy, you gain the money and pocket it right on the spot. In this game, all the money will be directly transferred to the ATM. This might have been a hassle in your normal RPG, but the system really works for Earthbound. The big reason is because when you lose a battle, you also lose half the money that is currently in your pocket. However, since the money gets transferred to the ATM, you're not exactly holding it, therefore protecting your hard-earned cash. This is effective because it stops you from having to re-earn all the money you lose if you don't win a battle, saving you both time and money. One more feature I'll show you is a telephone. It has many different uses, but perhaps the 2 most useful ones are when you call your mom and dad. When you call your dad, he gives you a recap on how much money you have in your ATM and how much experience points you need to level up. Most importantly, it allows you to save your game, which is very helpful for people who like a somewhat challenging game, but don't like repeating themselves. Besides, it's just plain common sense to save your progress. You'll need to call your mom too, but for a totally different reason. During the game, Ness might get a strange status element called homesickness. As the name implies, it makes you homesick. This causes you to miss turns in battle and instead make you think about home, which, in the midst of battle, is a bad thing. The only way to fully cure this is by calling your mom from the phone. This might be a nuisance to some, but it helps the player realize what type of emotions Ness goes through. Even though he's destined to save the world, and probably has enough power to do so, he's still only a 13-year-old kid, and still very dependent on his mom's love. Overall, this adds a more realistic touch to the game, further implying their goal to put you in Ness's perspective in a more believable way. If there's any downside to this feature, it would be that phones are the only places to save your progress and do these things. Where in some RPGs, such as Zelda and Fallout, you could save the game practically anywhere. This can be annoying because it sorta does become a hassle to leave a dungeon, go into a town, find a payphone, and pay for it in order to save your game. It's a small issue, but still a little annoying nevertheless. So now that we've gone over through some of the more unique aspects of this game, let's go talk about the actual item selection that you have. Okay, so in this game, your main form of healing will be food. And when I talk about food, I mean things from a cup of coffee, from a bag of fries to a hamburger. It even goes more into more traditional food like pizza, bread rolls, cookies. And of course, the more expensive they are, the more effective they will be to you. Okay, so now that we've gone through our main healing store, let's go to the drugstore, which basically serves as our armory if this was a typical RPG. So, instead of getting swords and defensive mail, we have our main arsenal weapon of a t-ball bat and defensive items like baseball caps. So, keeping it more on lines of real-life items that you would use to go and try to fight your enemies. Okay, one more I'm going to show off is a teddy bear. It may not look much, but once you put it in battle, this thing can actually protect you from actual damage that you would take, and it would take the damage for you. There are many more items that have many cool effects, but I'm going to let you figure those out yourself if you decide to play it. So now we're done with the items, let's move on with the battle system. Okay, so as you can see right now, I got a new partner, and now I think would be the perfect time to show this off, which is the hospital. As you can see, my partner technically fainted and died in the battle, so this is exactly how you revive them. You just go over here, have them check her out, and pay the $50, and she's back in. And that's how you revive fallen allies. Okay, so finally I'm going to teach you about the battle scenes in Earthbound. They pretty much are just like traditional RPGs, but instead of random encounters, you end up being able to see the enemy before you encounter them. Now, you can either go and sneak up behind them and attack them for a sneak attack, which allows you to get a turn in before they can attack, or if they hit you in the back, they get a first attack. In that case, the screen turned red, so they attacked me from behind. And now they're gonna get the first attack on me. Never really a good thing, so you always want to try to avoid that and always just try to go for a direct hit, because it just starts a normal battle. Now, I'm going to show you a few of the attacks. This is defense, so whenever you do that, you just defend. And I'm going to use the technique Pray to see how that works. Now, Pray has some very random effects that can happen, so you gotta be very careful when you use it. It can be very good or very bad. In this case, it was good, healing my HP. Now I'm going to show you the bash, which is basically your normal attack. I'm going to attack this, and I'm going to show you Mandy's PSI, which right now she has PSI Freeze, which attacks one enemy with a lot of damage, and PK Fire, which attacks multiple enemies with a little less damage. So because there's two of them, we're going to use PSI Fire. And he attacked the wrong person. Now, here she goes. We burn, and just like that, that's your normal battle system. And they sometimes leave items afterwards, so that's always a plus too. So what are my final thoughts on this game? To be honest, it's kind of hard to make an overall opinion of the game as a whole. I only played about the first 4 hours into it. I only fully explored 2 towns, and I only got half of my party, which is Ness and Mandy. However, with what I did experience, I was able to get a small taste of what Earthbound had to offer. As I stated earlier, this game took place in a more modern time, which is one of the only RPGs to do this. I think this was to show that adventures aren't only found where dragons and monsters exist, they can be found in your daily life also. Because of this, it really brought me to grow fond of the game because I didn't feel like I was a kid who just grabbed a sword and powered through everything. I felt like I was helping a normal boy that had to slowly build up his own strength and courage to be able to face the dangers that laid ahead of him. It made me feel that I could accomplish anything because a boy who's only 13 was also able to. This game just has that feel-good vibes with that RPGs like Zelda kinda lack. As they lean on being more serious, Earthbound is mostly leaning on an uplifting, humorous story, with serious issues tied into it. I know I only played a little bit of it, but the overall cheerfulness and seriousness blended together perfectly to make me enjoy every second I played it. Only complaint I would have was that it did start off a little slow. mainly because this for the first 15 minutes. It consists of a couple random events without telling you what the story is actually about. The game does pick up the pace though and shows no intention of slowing down. To sum it up, this game has something to offer for everyone. Whether you're a casual or hardcore RPG gamer, or a gamer that wants a humorous story that is meaningful, this is a game that anyone can enjoy. And even though I only played this game for 4 hours, I would still recommend this to anyone. So this is just a prime example on why you can't judge a game by just how it looks. It was a shame how Earthbound was kicked to the curb in the early years, but in a way, that's what made it all the better. It was neglected and hated for a while, due to its unusual style, but it did what most gamers can't do. It survived the test of time with a vengeance, and left many who played it even a little bit odd. This is Isaiah Fuller, and that was my evaluation on Earthbound.